All right, guys, amid all the price droppage and everything, and everyone's kind of getting scattered and afraid, there are a few good events that could possibly push the price of Bitcoin up fairly soon. And we're going to go over the list of events so people can settle down and not get crazy. The first one, obviously, in mid-October is the Grayscale case. Now, Grayscale won their case against the SEC, but remember, the SEC can go for an en banc repeal of the case. And what that is instead of a 3-judge panel to decide the case like they did this time, they can have the full 17-panel judge to decide the case. Now, they have 45 days from the case ruling to go for that kind of appeal, which happens in mid-October. Now, they might not want to go after the appeal because, once again, like we discussed, when you file an appeal, you can't submit any new information. You just have to get the judge to review the information that's already there. And since the SEC didn't provide any evidence, they basically just said, we're not going to accept this ETF because we don't like Bitcoin ETFs and we don't want to accept it. And the judge was like, nah, bro, that's not good enough. So they're basically basing that as their only argument if they go for an en banc appeal or appeal to the Supreme Court, which would take much, much longer. So that's mid-October. If they actually file that appeal and lose, they might actually have to be forced to accept the ETF. If they just kind of give up and don't file the appeal, they might have to come up with another BS excuse, probably having to do with custody. But since there's a Bitcoin futures ETF out there, it's going to be hard for them to argue otherwise. And mid-October, they might have to throw in the towel and actually approve the Grayscale ETF. Now, let's not forget, they just delayed these ETF decisions for another 45 days on 7 of the applications. But for some reason, Bitwise just withdrew their application, so there's 6 left. And these 6 do include BlackRock and Fidelity. So around the same time as that, they're going to have to make another decision whether to delay the BlackRock and Fidelity and all those other ETFs or let them through. And I think it's going to be very hard for them to actually file an appeal and win. So there's a very good chance that we might actually get an ETF in mid-October. Of course, some people expected an ETF right now and we didn't get one. They delayed them all. So obviously it's not guaranteed. They might try to appeal, but I think the SEC kind of knows that they can't win the appeal and it would just make them look even worse than they are now. Remember, the lawsuits are piling up one after another against Gary Gensler, against the SEC. Their reputation is being shot. The judges don't like them. And for Gary Gensler himself specifically, Warren Davidson and many congressmen are actually calling for his resignation of his FUBAR handling of crypto because he's getting defeated in federal court a lot. And the thing is, they've warned him about not going too hard on crypto, but he won't actually listen because he wants his reputation as a hardcore enforcer. I don't really buy the whole theory that he's listening to BlackRock or anything because he denied the BlackRock ETF as well. He's giving them the same runaround as everyone else, and they're probably not liking him too much right now for doing that. So the thing is, I think Gary Gensler is slowly running out of time to try to delay and disrupt crypto, and courts are not ruling in his favor at all. So there's a very good chance that sometime around October, we'll get a non-en banc appeal of the Grayscale case, and at least one of these Bitcoin ETFs, if not all of them, can go through. And with that comes a lot of money. And of course, that's obviously good for us crypto investors. Could actually provide a strong boost in October. Of course, there is the Coinbase case, and that's probably going to be in the next couple of months for deciding. Remember, the same judge presiding in the Coinbase case has provided in the Uniswap case, and she ruled in favor of Uniswap. Now, the SEC wasn't the one that sued Uniswap, but they sued Uniswap on the same reason and logic. And since they ruled in favor of Uniswap, they might rule in favor of Coinbase as well. That's not guaranteed because Coinbase is centralized. They determine what coins they want to list. Uniswap is supposedly decentralized and things get listed right away. But she actually said the only thing that Uniswap is responsible for is the underpinning contracts of Uniswap. The actual coins themselves are actually down to the protocol creators. So she might actually apply that logic to Coinbase. And if she does apply that logic to Coinbase, then the case against Coinbase brought by the SEC is going to be dismissed. And that might be an even bigger win than the Ripple case because that affects the entire secondary market. And if Coinbase gets ruled that way, my guess is Binance is going to get ruled that way as well. Binance has other allegations, fraud allegations that won't go away, but the securities allegations will go away. By the way, the fraud allegations, I don't think the SEC has any evidence. I don't know if the DOJ does, because the last time the judge asked the SEC for evidence, the SEC in the Binance case basically said, we don't have any evidence. We just think they're doing these things. And they better just have a better argument than that, because the judge didn't actually favor them when they made that excuse, and they did not actually freeze Binance's assets. But anyways, the secondary market judgment is the one that we want. And the thing is, that means Coinbase can list any coin on their exchange, and they won't be listing unregistered securities because it's all secondary market for Coinbase. That means VeChain and VeTho can finally get listed, but more than that, I think that it'll give a big boost to the altcoin market as it gives the secondary market finally full clarity. Of course, next we get to the Ripple case, and that could be the appeal rejected. And Ripple's team did actually file an anti-SEC suit to SEC special appeal thing today, saying that the SEC has not fulfilled or even tried to fulfill the requirements for a special appeal. And you know what? They're right. The SEC is basically saying, we don't like the judgment, therefore we want to stay in the judgment and we want a special appeal. But to get this special appeal, you have to say it's a huge matter of law, which this really isn't. And of course, the SEC wants to overturn much of the ruling, but I don't think they're going to be able to. Basically, Ripple's legal team said the SEC, this is from Cointelegraph, SEC's grounds for an appeal largely rested on dissatisfaction with a judge's decision. And you can't request an emergency appeal and a stay in the ruling just because you don't like the decision. It has to have exceptional circumstances required for interlocutory appeal were absent in this case. And the SEC can't really bring up a reason for that. Many of the SEC's arguments in these cases are actually without reason, and that's why they're actually losing. But they're trying to ram it through and delay even more, and Ripple is calling them out on it, saying hey, there's actually zero reason for an appeal in this case. Now, they said the other judge in the Terra Luna case actually ruled differently, but the judge in the Terra Luna case did acknowledge that they were different cases, and he didn't really question whether these coins by themselves are securities, only the way that they were actually sold. Ripple is basically arguing that the SEC should have to go through the whole appeals process, and of course, that's bad for the SEC because right now the ruling is the ruling in the law. The Coinbase case is in the same district, so that will affect the Coinbase case. And they stated very directly the SEC has not even attempted to meet the standard for a stay, even after the individual defendants identified that omission in their pre-motion order. The individual defendants write separately to oppose the SEC's request. The individual defendants being Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larson. That ruling in that case is still going on. Generally, for a regular appeal, you have to wait until that case is over, and that could be several years and way too late for the SEC. So the blocks are falling on top of the SEC. Their house of cards and non-logic is coming down. Courts are not favoring them, and it's all coming together in the next few months. So this is very, very exciting legal time for us because the SEC is getting crushed by the weight of 5 or 6 companies. Congressmen are not liking them, and people are actually actively asking for Gary Gensler to actually step down. So he's got to be feeling the heat. And let's not forget, Gensler has to testify before the House committee on September 27th. And since the GOP does control the House Financial Services Committee, they're not going to throw softballs at him. They're going to hit him with a lot of questions, and he's going to be sitting there going durr, I don't know, I can't tell, because he doesn't really have a reason for what he's actually doing in these cases. He's going to look like a fool in front of that panel, and that's not going to be good for any of the SEC's legal cases, because they're going to slam him with some of the same questions that these legal teams are actually asking him, and he is not going to be able to answer. So that actually might be a real big downfall for Gary Gensler. Him not being able to answer any of those questions that they actually throw at him and that could actually be a death knell for Gary Gensler if that is the case. And of course, the last thing I want to talk about is the FOMC meeting at the end of September. And that comes with today's unemployment report, which rose from 3.6 to 3.8. Rising unemployment, it means the economy is slowing down. That was the Fed's plan overall, and that's why they're actually upping the interest rate. And I think those reports actually will get them to not raise the interest rate more than it is right now. So with the unemployment numbers being up, especially if the CPI is good for this month, I do not think they'll raise the rates at the end of September, which could help. But the real one is November meeting. If they don't raise the rates at the end of November, that means the rate hikes are done, and they're really going to start looking at maybe lowering the rates starting hopefully earlier next year. And I think that will spark a lot of optimism for crypto. I mean, just due to the fact that the FOMC, basically not the FOMC, but the employment numbers were bad, or the employment report was bad, and unemployment actually grew, the stock market actually reacted positively, and I'm expecting the crypto market to follow along sometime next week. Hopefully we can get back up to 30,000, but it looks like there is still a lot of fear in the market, and we do need some of these legal cases actually cleared up and get that ETF in the way. But that might be coming in the next couple of months. So in the next 3 or 4 months, there's like at least 5 or 6 things that's happening. Big events with legal stuff, ETFs might be being approved, FOMC meetings, and the Coinbase and Grayscale case that could really, really pump crypto, and you should be watching out for these dates and these events. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.